You know this shape. It is a shape you have known since you were a child. You found them under rocks in the garden or in the damp corners of your basement. The woodlouse, the roly-poly, the pill bug. They are the harmless recyclers of the dirt, small, gray, and completely innocent. They are the bugs that curl up into a ball when they are afraid. But now, take that harmless little bug and drag it down. Drag it down past the sunlight, past the twilight zone, down to the bathypelagic, where the pressure is strong enough to crush a submarine. Make it cold. Make it silent. And then, make it grow. This is Bathynomus giganteus, the giant isopod. It is not a monster in the traditional sense. It doesn't hunt you, it doesn't roar, and it doesn't have venom. It is something worse. It is patient. It is a creature that has remained unchanged for 160 million years. It watched the dinosaurs rise, and it watched them burn, and while the world above ended, it sat in the dark, waiting for something to die so it could eat. It is the pill bug of the deep, and it is living proof that if you hide in the dark long enough, you become immortal. To understand the isopod, you have to understand how wrong we used to be. In the mid-1800s, there was a man named Edward Forbes, a brilliant naturalist who proposed the azoic hypothesis. Azoic means without life. Forbes believed that the ocean was like a layered cake. The top layer had light and warmth, so it had fish. The middle layer had less light, so it had fewer fish. But the bottom, the abyss? Forbes calculated that below 300 fathoms, about 550 meters, the pressure was too high, the cold was too intense, and the darkness was too absolute for anything to survive. He believed the bottom of the ocean was a desert, a frozen, stagnant graveyard where nothing moved. Science accepted this. It made sense. Life needs energy. Life needs light. The deep had neither. Then came 1879. A French expedition led by Alphonse Milne Edwards was dredging the Gulf of Mexico. They dropped a net down to roughly 1,800 meters. They dragged it through the mud of the abyss, expecting to pull up nothing but rocks and clay. When the winch groaned and the net broke the surface, the sailors recoiled. Tangled in the mesh wasn't a rock, it was a bug. A massive alien louse, nearly a foot long, thrashing its 14 legs in the open air. It was the first time human eyes had ever seen a giant isopod, and in that single moment, the azoic hypothesis died. This creature proved that the deep ocean wasn't dead. It was alive, but it was a different kind of life. It was a life that didn't follow our rules. The isopod was a messenger. It told us that down there, in the crushing dark, things grow big, things grow hard, and things are very, very hungry. Let's look at the machine. The giant isopod is a crustacean, distantly related to shrimp and crabs, but strictly speaking, it is an isopod. Iso meaning same. Pod meaning foot. 14 legs, all identical. On land, isopods are tiny because they breathe through gills that need moisture. If they get too big, they can't get enough oxygen, and they collapse under their own weight. But in the deep ocean, the water is cold, and cold water holds more oxygen. This allows them to grow to terrifying sizes. The largest recorded specimen was nearly 76 centimeters, 2.5 feet long. Imagine a cockroach the size of a golden retriever. Its body is encased in a thick, calcareous exoskeleton. These overlapping segments allow it to be flexible but also impenetrable. It is a tank with articulated armor. If you attack it, it does exactly what the pill bug in your garden does. It rolls up. It becomes a sphere of armored plating. A shark can bite it, but it's like biting a rock. The isopod simply waits inside its own shell, safe and patient, until the predator gets bored and leaves. But the most disturbing feature isn't the armor. It's the face. It has compound eyes, like a fly, but they are enormous. They are reflective. Here is the horror. The isopod lives in near total darkness. So why does it need eyes? It uses them to see the shadows of bioluminescence. But more importantly, these eyes have a tapetum lucidum, a reflective layer behind the retina. This is why they glow when you shine a flashlight on them. They are amplifying every single photon of light that exists down there. It is a creature designed to see you, long before you could ever see it. What does a tank eat in a desert? The floor of the Gulf of Mexico or the Pacific Ocean is not a buffet. Food is scarce. Most of the food comes from marine snow, the flakes of dead skin, poop, and rotting flesh falling from the surface miles above. The isopod is a scavenger. It is the janitor, but it is an aggressive janitor. They have 4 sets of jaws. Yes, 4. The outer jaws are for tearing. The inner jaws are for shredding. They work like a meat grinder. When an isopod finds a meal, a dead whale, a sunken fish, or a squid carcass, it doesn't just bite. It burrows. It will eat its way inside the carcass to get to the organs. But here is the truly alien part. The metabolism. We live in a world where if you don't eat for a week, you die. In Japan, at the Toba Aquarium, there was a giant isopod named Number 1. They fed it a horse mackerel in 2009. It ate the fish. Then it stopped. The caretakers tried to feed it again. It refused. They tried a month later. Refused. No, one did not eat for 5 years. It didn't hibernate. It walked around. It interacted with other isopods. It was alive. It just didn't need to eat. It survived for 1,868 days without a single calorie. How? They are masters of stasis. They can lower their metabolism to almost absolute zero. They become biological statues. They sit in the mud, barely breathing, barely existing, waiting for the next whale to fall. If they have to wait a week, fine. If they have to wait 5 years, also fine. Time means nothing to them. Let's talk about the whale fall. When a whale dies, it sinks. It brings tons of meat to the bottom. This is the greatest event in the life of the deep sea. It is a festival, and the isopods are the VIP guests. They gorge themselves. They don't have a full signal like we do. Their stomachs are expandable. An isopod will eat until its legs physically cannot touch the ground anymore. Its belly swells up like a balloon, lifting its armor off the mud. It will eat until it is paralyzed by its own gluttony. And then it will roll over into a ditch and digest that meal for the next 2 years. But are they only scavengers? For a long time, we thought so. We thought they were lazy. But recently, we've seen footage that changes the narrative. We have seen isopods attacking slow-moving fish. We have seen them rise up and latch onto the face of a dogfish shark. They are facultative predators, which means they prefer trash. But if you are slow enough and they are hungry enough, you become the trash. Imagine being a fish in the dark. You are swimming slowly to conserve energy. Suddenly, 14 hooked legs wrap around your head. You thrash, but you are biting into solid calcium armor, and then the 4 sets of jaws begin to work. It is a slow, mechanical execution. We look at them and we shudder. They look too much like the bugs we crush under our shoes. They trigger a primal disgust. But the giant isopod demands respect. It has survived mass extinctions. It has survived the death of the oceans. It has survived the asteroid that killed the T-Rex. It is not just a bug. It is a survivor. It is a biological machine built for a world without hope. But if you think their eating habits are the weirdest thing about them, wait until you see how they breed. Reproduction in the deep is a mystery, but for the isopod, it is a burden. The females possess a brood pouch, similar to a kangaroo, or more accurately, the pill bugs in your garden. This is called a marsupium. When a female lays eggs, she lays the largest eggs of any marine invertebrate. They are huge, size of ping pong balls, but once she lays them, she makes a sacrifice. She stops eating. The pouch is located on her underside, covering her mouth parts and restricting her movement. For months, brooding in the cold dark, she buries herself in the sediment to protect her young from predators. She starves herself. By the time the eggs hatch, she is weak, her energy reserves drained. From the pouch emerge not larvae, but maniae, miniature adults. They are born fully formed, ready to survive. They skip the childhood phase entirely because the deep ocean has no mercy for children. You are either born a tank or you are born food. There is also the matter of deep sea gigantism. It's the rule that haunts the abyss. Why is a pill bug on land the size of a pea, but down there, the size of a football? Theories abound. Some say it is the cold. Cells grow larger in cold temperatures. Some say it is the lack of predators. You can afford to be big when nothing hunts you. But the most unsettling theory is oxygen. The water down there is oxygen-rich. It fuels growth. It suggests that if we could pump enough oxygen into a room and make it cold enough, the bugs in our own houses might start to grow. It suggests that size is just a constraint of the environment, not the DNA. The giant isopod is what happens when you take the brakes off of evolution. We must also consider their defense against the only thing that does hunt them: us. In Taiwan and parts of Japan, the giant isopod is a delicacy. It appears on menus. People steam them. They crack open the shell like a lobster. They say the meat tastes like crab, but sweeter. But the isopod has a final laugh. Their bodies are high in heavy metals. Because they are scavengers eating the detritus of the ocean, they accumulate copper and aluminum in their flesh. But we are making a mistake if we think they are just crawlers. We assume, because they look like tanks, that they are heavy and clumsy. We assume they are glued to the floor. This is a dangerous assumption. When a giant isopod needs to move, it does not just crawl. It swims. But it doesn't swim like a fish. It swims like a malfunction in reality. It possesses a set of fan-like limbs called pleopods underneath its tail. When it engages them, it lifts off the ocean floor. And then it flips over. It swims upside down. Imagine a creature the size of a cat, armored like a tank, hovering silently through the water column, belly up, legs twitching in the current. It looks unnatural. It looks like a glitch in the physics engine of the world. This ability allows them to leave the bottom and intercept food falling from above, or to travel vast distances across the abyssal plains without ever touching the ground. They are not just benthic mud dwellers, they are patrolling the three-dimensional void. Let's go deeper into the biology, specifically the fluids inside them. If you were to cut a human, we bleed red because of iron, hemoglobin. If you cut a giant isopod, it bleeds blue. Or, more accurately, it bleeds clear, and the blood turns blue when it hits the water. They run on hemocyanin, a copper-based protein. This is a primitive alien system compared to ours, but in the cold, it is superior. It doesn't thicken, it doesn't freeze. It circulates efficiently in temperatures that would stop a human heart, but hemocyanin has a side effect. It is viscous, it is thick. If you injected a human with isopod blood, our heart would fail trying to pump it. They are pressurized hydraulic machines. This blue blood is also a key to their survival in anoxic events. Sometimes deep ocean currents shift and oxygen levels drop to near zero. Fish die. Sharks suffocate. The isopod? The isopod simply slows down. Its copper blood holds onto oxygen with a desperate grip. It can survive for hours, maybe days, in water that is chemically suffocating everything else. It waits for the water to breathe again. We think we have found the biggest ones, but the ocean likes to humble us. In 2020, researchers in the Sunda Strait off the coast of Indonesia pulled up a new species. They called it Bathynomus raksasa. In Indonesian, raksasa means giant, but the internet gave it a different name: the Darth Vader isopod. It was darker, grimier, and larger than the standard giant. Its head shape was different, more helmet-like, more angular. It proved that speciation is happening down there. Different trenches have different monsters. The populations are isolated by underwater mountain ranges. This implies that in the deepest trenches, the Mariana, the Tonga, there could be species of isopod that have been genetically isolated for millions of years, growing to sizes or developing weapons that we haven't seen yet. We are mapping the surface of Mars, but we don't know what kind of bugs live in our own basement. There is a psychological horror to them that goes beyond biology. It is the uncanny valley of the fossil record. When you look at a giant isopod, you are looking at a ghost. You are seeing the echo of the trilobite. Trilobites ruled the Earth for nearly 300 million years before going extinct. They were the masters of the primal seas. The isopod is not a descendant of the trilobite. but it is an example of convergent evolution. Nature found a shape that worked, the segmented shield, the many legs, the bottom-feeding habit, and it kept it. When you look at an isopod, you are seeing what the world looked like before mammals, before reptiles, before trees. You are looking at a design that is older than the concept of fear itself. They are living fossils, not in the scientific sense, but in the aesthetic sense. They are time travelers that refuse to die. We also need to talk about their eyes again, because there is something scientists discovered that is truly unsettling. The eyes of the giant isopod are incredibly sensitive to blue light, the color of bioluminescence, but they are completely blind to red light. In the deep ocean, the color red is invisible. It appears black. Many deep-sea predators are red for this reason, camouflage. But the isopod doesn't care about red light. It waits for the flash. It waits for the spark. But recent dissections suggest their optical nerve is wired directly into their reflex centers. They might not see images like we do. They might not see a picture of a fish. They might just see raw data, motion, flash, chemical trail. They are biological robots processing inputs without the clutter of consciousness. A shark might be curious. An octopus might be playful. An isopod is purely input-output. Hunger equals eat. Threat equals curl. There is no room for personality in a machine built for efficiency. Finally, consider the future. Humans are obsessed with the end of the world. We worry about nuclear war, climate change, asteroids. We build bunkers. But the giant isopod is already in the bunker. It lives in the safest place on Earth. If a meteor strikes the surface and burns the atmosphere, the isopod, 3,000 meters down, won't even feel the shockwave. If nuclear winter blocks out the sun for 100 years, the isopod won't care. It doesn't use the sun. It feeds on the dead. And in an apocalypse, there will be plenty of dead. The irony of our fear of these creatures is that they are the inheritors of the Earth. Long after the last human has turned to dust, long after our cities have crumbled into the sea, the giant isopod will still be there, crawling through the dark blue blood pumping slowly, waiting for the next meal to fall from the silent world above. They are not the monsters of the deep. They are the final witnesses. But even a tank has a weakness. There is one moment in the life of a giant isopod where it is vulnerable, terrified, and soft. It is the moment of the molt. Like all crustaceans, the isopod is trapped inside its own skeleton. To grow, it must break out. This is a violent process. It splits its armor down the back and slowly, painfully pulls its legs and antennae out of the old shell. When it emerges, it is not the hard, calcified tank we know. It is soft. It feels like wet rubber. For a few hours, or perhaps days, until the new shell hardens in the cold water, the isopod is defenseless. It cannot curl into a ball effectively. It cannot fight. It is a massive, naked protein shake sitting on the ocean floor. During this time, they hide. They bury themselves deep in the sediment, terrified of their own kind. Because if another isopod finds a molting brother, it doesn't see family. It sees a soft meal that doesn't require chewing. The ruthlessness of the deep extends to fratricide. We should also look at the family tree because the giant isopod is actually the nice one. It is a free-living scavenger. But its cousins? Its cousins are the stuff of nightmares. The order, Isopoda, includes the infamous Cymathoa exigua, the tongue-eating louse. This creature enters a fish through the gills, clamps onto the fish's tongue, and drinks the blood until the tongue atrophies and falls off. Then, the isopod attaches itself to the remaining muscle stub and becomes the fish's new tongue. The fish survives. It uses the parasite to grind food. They live together in a horrific biological marriage. Why does this matter? Because the giant isopod shares DNA with this thing. It has the same mouthparts, just scaled up. It proves that the biological blueprint of the isopod is not just about scavenging, it is about exploitation. We are lucky that Bathynomus grew to the size of a cat and decided to eat dead whales. If it had decided to pursue the parasitic lifestyle of its cousin, Imagine a parasite the size of a football attaching itself to the tongue of a blue whale. The ocean is full of horrors we dodged by pure evolutionary chance. Let's talk about the trap. How do we catch them? You can't fish for them with a hook. Their mouths are too small and hard. You catch them with greed. Researchers use baited traps, cages filled with rotting tuna or mackerel. They sink these cages into the black. The scent plumes out, and the isopods come. But here is the disturbing part. Once they get in, they don't want to get out. They gorge themselves on the bait until they are so bloated they physically cannot fit back through the entrance hole. They trap themselves with their own gluttony. When the researchers haul the trap up from 2,000 meters, the isopods are often still eating, oblivious to the fact that they are ascending to their deaths. They are so driven by the instinct to consume that they ignore the change in pressure, the change in temperature, and the alien light of the surface. They die chewing. There is a strange cultural phenomenon surrounding them, specifically in Japan. It is the only place on Earth where the giant isopod is considered kawaii, cute. They make plushies of them. They make iPhone cases shaped like them. There are gachapon capsule toys of isopods curling into balls. It is a bizarre dissonance. We take a creature that lives in the crushing dark, a scavenger that eats the faces off of dead things, and we turn it into a soft, huggable pillow. It speaks to a human need to domesticate our monsters. We want to own the abyss. We want to make it safe. But if you hold one of those plushies and then look at the real animal, at the jagged, serrated edges of its legs and the void-like reflection of its eyes, you realize that the plushie is a lie. The reality is a creature that would strip the flesh from your bones if you fell to the bottom, and it wouldn't feel a shred of emotion while doing it. Finally, we must acknowledge their role as the gravediggers of the world. Without the giant isopod, the ocean would die. We need to talk about the gator fall. In 2019, scientists in the Gulf of Mexico decided to test the limits of the giant isopod's appetite. They didn't use fish, they used an alligator. They took 3 dead alligators, weighed them down, and dropped them 2,000 meters into the abyss. They wanted to see if the ancient armor of a reptile could stop the ancient jaws of the isopod. It didn't. Less than 24 hours after the alligator hit the seafloor, the isopods were there. They didn't just nibble. They breached the alligator's tough, leathery hide in specific soft spots, the underbelly and the armpits, and then they burrowed inside. The footage is harrowing. You see the shape of the alligator, and then you see the skin rippling as isopods move inside the torso. They ate the alligator from the inside out. This proved that there is no skin, no scale, and no hide on Earth tough enough to stop them. If a dinosaur fell into the ocean 70 million years ago, the isopods would have eaten it the exact same way. They are the ultimate recyclers of history, but they are not alone down there. The isopod is the tank, but it is surrounded by the infantry. These are the amphipods, tiny shrimp-like creatures the size of a flea. When a carcass falls, the amphipods arrive in the millions. They swarm like aquatic ants, stripping meat with terrifying speed. You might think they would compete with the giant isopod, but they don't. The isopod ignores them. It will plow through a cloud of swarming amphipods, crushing them under its legs, indifferent to their presence. The amphipods, in turn, cannot bite through the isopod's shell. It is a hierarchy of horror. The swarm strips the surface. The tank breaks the bones. They work in tandem, an accidental industrial disassembly line that ensures nothing goes to waste. The isopod is the heavy machinery. The amphipods are the workers. Together, they can turn a 40-ton whale into a clean white skeleton in less than 6 months. Let's look closer at the mouth, because jaws is too simple a word. They have maxillipeds, literally jaw feet. These are appendages evolved from legs that have turned into feeding tools. They don't just bite up and down like we do. They manipulate. They hold the meat. They rotate it. Imagine having hands attached to your chin that hold your burger while you eat it. That is the isopod. This dexterity allows them to be surgical. They don't just rip blindly. They can pick meat off a bone with the precision of a surgeon using a scalpel. This contradicts their brutish appearance. They are precise eaters. They are delicate butchers encased in heavy armor. We also have to consider the gold rush of the deep. The ocean floor is littered with polymetallic nodules, rocks containing manganese, nickel, and cobalt. These are essential for our batteries, our phones, our electric cars. Mining companies are currently building massive dredging machines to scrape the bottom of the Pacific. These machines are like combine harvesters for the seafloor. The giant isopod lives in the mud. It cannot swim fast enough to escape a dredging machine. If deep-sea mining goes ahead as planned, we will be grinding these living fossils into paste, along with the rocks. We are on the verge of declaring war on the abyssal plain. The isopod survived the asteroid, but it might not survive the iPhone. We are about to destroy the oldest undisturbed ecosystem on the planet for battery life, and the isopod will be the first casualty. There is a strange acoustic property to them as well. They are silent, yes, but they possess a stridulation capability. Some crustaceans can rub their legs together to make noise. While we haven't recorded a giant isopod screaming, the mechanics are there. In the crushing dark, sound travels 4 times faster than in air. If they do communicate, if they do signal each other, it would be a clicking, grinding language of chitin on chitin. Imagine standing in a dark room and hearing the sound of tectonic plates shifting, but on a miniature scale. That is the sound of an isopod colony waking up. It is the sound of bones rubbing together. Finally, consider these zombie isopods. Nothing is invincible. Even the tank gets sick. There are deep-sea fungi and microscopic parasites that can infect the giant isopod. These pathogens eat away at the shell, creating shell disease. It looks like black burn marks on their armor. We have found specimens with pitted, eroding backs, slowly being dissolved by bacteria. It is a slow, agonizing vulnerability. Even in the deepest, most isolated place on Earth, disease finds a way. It reminds us that biological warfare exists at every level. The isopod spends its life eating the dead, but eventually the microscopic dead start eating uns samstoi. It is the cycle closing. The scavenger becomes the scavenged long before it actually dies. We need to talk about the gut. Not just the size of it, but the chemistry. When a whale dies and sinks, it doesn't just sit there, it rots. The meat ferments, it becomes a toxic sludge of botulism, sulfides, and bacteria that would kill a human being in minutes if ingested. The giant isopod eats this sludge. It prefers it. This implies that their digestive system is not just a stomach, it is a chemical hazmat facility. They possess enzymes and gut flora capable of neutralizing toxins that would dissolve other animals from the inside out. They are eating biological poison and turning it into armor. This adaptation suggests that they are the ultimate survivalist organism. In a post-apocalyptic ocean, when everything else is dead and rotting, the isopod doesn't starve. It feasts. The death of the ecosystem is just the dinner bell for them. Let's shift to the eyes again, because there is a detail called the sunglasses effect. If you look closely at the eyes of a giant isopod, they appear dark, almost black under normal light. But in the deep, they reflect light. This is because they have a specialized pigment shielding. They live in a world where the only light is the sudden, blinding flash of a predator's bioluminescence, or the intrusive searchlights of a submarine. Their eyes are calibrated to detect motion without being blinded by the glare. They are wearing biological night vision goggles that automatically dim when things get too bright. It is a level of optical engineering that human technology is still trying to replicate. We build cameras to see in the dark. The isopod grew them 100 million years ago. There is also the terrifying reality of ocean acidification. We pump carbon dioxide into the air. The ocean absorbs it. The water becomes more acidic. Acid dissolves calcium. The giant isopod is made of calcium carbonate. Its armor is essentially limestone. As the oceans turn acidic, we are slowly dissolving their shells. We have seen other crustaceans like pteropods whose shells are becoming thin and brittle. If this happens to the isopod, the tank of the deep becomes the eggshell of the deep. They will not die from hunger. They will die because their own skin is melting off their body.